Once you have all of your 6 or more images in your composition, you're going to think about arrangement and placement. So in this case, I could move, I'm going to use the move tool right here, and I can move this down over to the bottom corner so that I'm starting to use the rule of thirds here, and then I can place some other objects up in this area. And the reason I would do that is because the fingers are pointing towards the right. And so if I place these on the other side, the flow could be a little bit off. I think it works, but it works better on this side. So then I would continue adding more around this. Then to finalize your details, think about composition, placement, all of those different things. I'm going to move this back up to 100% for now. So we want your colors to work together. In this case, I'm going to create a monochromatic color scheme, and I'm going to focus on the warm colors. So like this, the colors of the hand, but I'm going to shift the background colors to more of like a warm kind of goldish color and feel to it. So when I do this, I am going to start with the background, and I'm going to go to my adjustments. So I'm going to change my view here under workspace. I'm going to go back to photography, and that way I can see my layers here and my adjustments. So I'm going to start by shifting the hue saturation. So I'm going to click on that. Right now when I look at my layers, the hue saturation is on top of my star layer, and then I don't have anything else underneath. So because of that, when I change the hue, it's only going to adjust it for that layer 1, the star layer. Once I do the other ones, I'm going to have to use a clipping mask because it'll work just a little bit differently. Okay, so right now I'm shifting the hue, and it works pretty well overall. If I click colorize, it's just going to change the way it places that color on top. And here I can make it more of just one color, one monochromatic, versus if I don't have the colorize on, it's pulling a lot of colors and it's just shifting the colors that are already in there. So in this case, I'm going to do hue, and I'm going to move this until I get it to that goldish side. I'm going to start with that. For now, I can always come back and switch it, and then I can saturate it even more. It's pretty light right now, and I'll show you how to change the lights and darks a little bit so that it's not so bright. We need some more blacks coming through. So I'm going to stay on layer 1. I'm going to click on levels this time, which is this histogram. This is the darks of my image, midtones, and highlights. So in the darks or the shadows, I don't have any of the histogram above it. So that's an indication to me that I could bring it way down. And now I'm getting that darkness of that sky, which I really like. And I could bring the highlights up a little bit, maybe shift this around. So now I have this kind of sweeping motion of space and stars. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to apply that hue saturation to the moon this time. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go back to hue saturation. I'll click colorize. And when I do that, it applies it to every image below the hue saturation because everything else is underneath. So because of that, I'm going to click on the clipping mask right here. That applies it just to the moon this time. So now when I adjust the hue, I'm going to still make it a goldish color, but I don't have to have it that exact same gold as the background. So I'm going to do it a little closer to something like this. So it's a little bit warmer, a little redder. And then I can also saturate it a little bit more, maybe give it kind of a glowing feel. And then I'm still going to change those levels again. So when I click on levels, I'm going to click on that clipping mask, and then I'm going to darken those darks and those midtones in the case of this. I'm going to do the same thing for this layer, so the hand layer, and I'm going to come to it and choose my levels, and I'm just going to darken all of that. And if I wanted to apply that to the hand, I'm going to do the clipping mask, but I do like how it darkens up that background as well, so I'm going to keep that levels for both of those. Now I want to see if I can get the moon to blend in with the image a little bit more. So I'm going to click back on the moon layer. In our layers palette, there is a normal. It says normal right here. When I click down, these are all of our different blending modes. I'm going to click on darken and use the arrow key on my keyboard to arrow down through these. So darken obviously doesn't work. It makes it disappear too much. When I arrow down now, this is multiply. You can see it changing right here. So I'm going to arrow down, see if I like the way any of these work. And if I do, but maybe the setting's a little bit wrong, I can always change the opacity just a little bit on that. In this case, I kind of almost like that inverse, that exclusion. That works really well. Kind of an interesting way to look at it. I'm going to go with hard light. I like the way it blends it. The saturation's a little intense with it, so I can bring the opacity down on that layer, and that's going to make it not quite as strong. Or I could go back to my hue saturation layer. If I click on this icon, it brings that properties of that saturation or the hue saturation back, and I can just desaturate it a little bit so it's not as intense of a color. All right, so I would continue adding the other objects in this, editing the colors, the values, brightness, contrast, until I get a cohesive looking image.